Cinderella woke to the smell of ashes and the faint chirping of morning birds outside the small, grimy window of the attic room she was forced to occupy. Her hands, rough from scrubbing the floors and polishing her stepsisters' countless shoes, ached even before the day had begun. She tied her tangled hair into a loose braid and glanced at the cracked mirror, trying to see the spark of hope she still clung to. Downstairs, the household erupted into commotion. A royal messenger, resplendent in fine silks and bearing a gilded envelope sealed with the prince's crest, announced that a grand ball would be held at the palace in honor of the prince's birthday. The stepsisters squealed in delight, grabbing mirrors and combs, vying to see who would appear most dazzling. "Mother, look at this. Perhaps this will be our chance to finally catch the prince's eye," cried Anastasia, the elder stepsister, twirling in front of the fireplace. Her sister Drusilla clutched the letter, barely able to contain her excitement. "We simply must go, Mother. Imagine the jewels, the gowns, everything." Lady Callista, their stepmother, smoothed her elegant dress with a sharp glare aimed at Cinderella, who timidly hovered at the doorway, sweeping the kitchen floor. "You?" she scoffed, voice dripping with disdain. "You have no place at such a ball. Your rags and your dirt-streaked hands make you unworthy of even looking at royalty." Cinderella's chest tightened. She wanted to protest, to say that she, too, longed for more than this life, but the words caught in her throat. She lowered her gaze and whispered, almost to herself, "Perhaps someday, someday." After the stepsisters left for fittings and preparations, Cinderella remained in the cold kitchen, staring at the empty hearth. She imagined herself in the grand ballroom, twirling in silks and satins, the golden light of chandeliers reflecting off a gown that shimmered like moonlight. In her mind, she could hear the prince's laughter and feel his hand brushing hers as they danced. The vision was vivid, intoxicating, and cruelly unattainable. That night, as the household settled into sleep, Cinderella crept to the fireplace, rubbing the last embers of ash into the cold metal. The fire cast long, flickering shadows on the walls. She hummed a soft, melancholy tune, a song of longing she had made up long ago. The notes carried her dreams into the still night, a life beyond the chores, the harsh words, and the constant reminders of her supposed worthlessness. For a moment, she allowed herself to imagine freedom, running through moonlit gardens, laughing without fear, and maybe, just maybe, meeting someone who would see her for who she truly was. But reality pressed in, heavy and unyielding. A cold draft whispered through the cracks in the walls, reminding her that the world beyond her room was not for her. Cinderella lay down on her thin mattress, clutching a worn piece of cloth she had stitched into a small pillow. With the sounds of the household fading, she whispered into the darkness, if only magic were real, if only I could go to the ball." Little did she know, her wish had already begun to stir the wheels of destiny in motion. Cinderella wandered into the garden, her bare feet sinking into the cool, damp earth. Tears streaked her soot-stained cheeks, and she hugged her knees to her chest, shivering in the night air. The moonlight spilled across the flowers, casting silver shadows over the stone paths. She whispered to herself, "I'll never go. I'll never see the ball." Suddenly, a soft, shimmering light appeared among the roses. Cinderella blinked, unsure if her eyes were playing tricks on her. The glow grew brighter, warmer, until it revealed a kindly figure floating just above the ground. She wore a gown that sparkled like starlight, and her eyes twinkled with gentle amusement. In her hand, she held a slender wand, from which tiny sparks danced and shimmered like fireflies. "My dear Cinderella," the figure said in a melodic voice that soothed the ache in Cinderella's heart. "Why are you crying so?" Cinderella gasped, startled. Who are you?" "I am your fairy godmother," the woman replied, kneeling to meet her gaze. "I have been waiting for the moment you dared to dream beyond the walls of your home. Tonight, you shall attend the ball. Tonight, you shall shine." Cinderella's eyes widened. "The ball? But how? I have nothing to wear." The fairy godmother raised her wand, and a single swirl of sparkling light lifted Cinderella's ragged dress. Threads unraveled and reweaved themselves, forming a gown that glimmered like liquid silver under the moonlight. The skirt swirled around her in layers of delicate silk, embroidered with tiny stars that seemed to twinkle as she moved. The fairy godmother clapped her hands, and in an instant, a pair of glass slippers appeared, perfectly molded to Cinderella's feet. They gleamed with a faint inner light, reflecting the moon and stars as if they contained a piece of the night sky itself. Cinderella held her hands to her face, unable to speak. It's beautiful," she whispered, tears of joy welling again. "Not yet," said the fairy godmother with a wink. She tapped her wand once more, and a pumpkin from the garden transformed into a magnificent carriage, polished to a radiant gold, its wheels shining like molten sunlight. Mice scurried from the hedges, transformed into elegant horses, their manes braided with silver ribbons, and a stately coachman appeared, tipping his hat politely. Cinderella trembled with excitement, her heart racing. I can really go?" "Yes, my dear," said the fairy godmother, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "But heed this warning. The magic will last only until the stroke of midnight. When the clock strikes 12, everything will return to its original form. You must leave before then." Cinderella nodded earnestly, determination mingling with awe. "I promise. I'll return before midnight. I won't be late." "Good," said the fairy godmother, smiling. "Then go, and let your heart lead the way. Trust in yourself, for you are braver than you know." With a swirl of the wand, the carriage doors opened, and Cinderella stepped inside. The night air seemed to shimmer with anticipation as the horses trotted forward, carrying her toward the palace. The garden faded behind her, replaced by the glittering lights of the city. As the carriage rolled through the cobblestone streets, Cinderella pressed her hands to the glass, watching her reflection flicker with the glow of magic. She felt a thrill unlike any she had known, a mixture of fear, hope, and wonder. For the first time in her life, she believed that anything was possible. The carriage rolled to a graceful stop at the palace gates, the golden wheels clicking against the cobblestones. Cinderella took a deep breath, her heart pounding in her chest like a drum. The palace loomed above her, its towers glittering under the starlit sky, each window aglow with the warm shimmer of candlelight. Servants in crisp uniforms bowed as the carriage doors opened, revealing her in her dazzling gown. As she stepped onto the marble steps, a hush fell over the assembled crowd. Noblemen and ladies alike turned their heads, whispers rippling through the hall like a gentle breeze. Every eye seemed drawn to her, every heart stirred by the elegance she had never known she possessed. The prince, standing at the center of the grand ballroom, noticed her instantly. He strode forward, his eyes fixed on the girl, whose presence seemed to command both attention and admiration. "You," he said, bowing with a flourish, "are unlike anyone I have ever seen. May I have the honor of this dance?" Cinderella's breath caught, and she nodded, barely trusting her own voice. "Yes, Your Highness." As they moved onto the polished dance floor, the orchestra's strings and flutes swelled, wrapping them in a melody that seemed composed just for them. The prince's hand fit naturally over hers, guiding her with gentle assurance. They twirled and laughed, discovering that their connection went beyond the formalities of courtly dances. Each glance and smile revealed curiosity, kindness, and a playful wit that made the prince laugh more freely than he had in years. "You move as if you've danced 100 times, he teased, his eyes sparkling with mischief. I've only dreamed of dancing like this," Cinderella admitted softly, the shimmer of her gown reflecting the ballroom lights with every turn. "Never thought I'd actually be here." The prince's smile softened, and he looked at her as if seeing her for who she truly was, not merely a guest at a royal event. "Then I'm glad tonight is your dream come true. I hope it is just the first of many." Meanwhile, across the room, the stepsisters floundered, oblivious to the girl stealing the spotlight. Their elaborate gowns and flustered attempts at conversation failed to mask their insecurity. Anastasia tugged at Drusilla's sleeve. Who is she?" she whispered, frowning. She looks familiar somehow." But Drusilla shook her head, too busy preening in the prince's peripheral glance to notice. "I don't know. Just ignore her. No matter. Tonight, it's about us." Cinderella, lost in the warmth of the prince's laughter, felt a sense of belonging she had never known. For the first time, she wasn't defined by soot, chores, or the cruel words of her stepmother. Here, in the glow of chandeliers and the soft music of the orchestra, she was seen, celebrated, and cherished, even if only for one night. Yet, as the night deepened, a quiet unease lingered at the edge of her joy. The memory of her stepmother's harsh words and the fairy godmother's warning hovered in her mind. Midnight approached. The thought prickled like icy needles, reminding her that this fleeting magic could vanish in an instant, and with it, the enchanting world she had only just begun to explore. But for now, she allowed herself to laugh, to twirl, and to feel the thrill of a life she had dared to imagine. For tonight, the palace and the prince were hers to enjoy. Cinderella floated across the dance floor, her laughter mingling with the orchestra's music, but her senses sharpened as a shadow moved near the edge of the room. A palace guard, tall and stern, stood silently against a marble column, his gaze fixed unwaveringly on her. Her smile faltered, a chill creeping up her spine. Why would a guard watch her so intently? She twirled once more, her glass slippers catching the candlelight, and noticed the guard subtly whispering to a fellow attendant. Her heart skipped a beat as fragments of their hushed words reached her ears. Stepmother, spies, find her." Cinderella froze, every joyful note of the music fading into a tense drumbeat in her chest. Her stepmother had somehow discovered her presence. Spies, hidden among the court, were watching her every move, waiting for the moment her secret could be exposed. She took a steadying breath, trying not to betray the rising panic. "I must be careful," she thought. "No misstep, no reveal. Not tonight." The stepsisters, noticing her apparent distraction, attempted to lure her into their schemes. Anastasia sidled close, feigning innocence. "Cinderella, you simply must let me show the prince your graceful twirls. Surely he would love to see your steps up close," Drusilla added with a giggle. "Oh, yes. Imagine if he knew how talented you truly are." Cinderella forced a polite smile and shook her head subtly. "Thank you, but She hesitated, glancing at the watchful guard. "I must attend to my own duties." The prince, sensing her unease, leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Are you all right?" "You seem distracted." Cinderella managed a soft smile, her eyes meeting his with a mix of vulnerability and strength. I'm fine, just enjoying the music and the night." Yet inside, her mind raced. Every glance from the stepsisters, every whisper from the corners of the grand hall, felt like a thread that could unravel the delicate magic around her. Her identity was her secret jewel, fragile and precious, and she could not let it slip away. Not yet. She moved carefully across the dance floor, laughing lightly at the prince's jokes, all the while scanning the crowd. She caught fleeting glimpses of figures lurking near doorways and pillars, spies undoubtedly. Each step she took was measured, each twirl calculated to maintain the illusion of carefree elegance. The music swelled, and Cinderella allowed herself a brief moment of joy. But the tension lingered like a shadow at the edge of a candle's glow. The night was enchanting, yes, but one misstep, one glance the wrong way, and the magic would shatter, revealing her to the prying eyes of her stepmother and stepsisters. And yet, even with the danger pressing close, she felt a spark of defiance ignite within her. "I will enjoy this night. I will dance. I will shine, no matter what." The ballroom shimmered around her, a fragile bubble of wonder balanced on the edge of danger, and Cinderella resolved to navigate both with courage and grace. The prince took Cinderella's hand with a gentle, confident grip, leading her through a quiet corridor that curved away from the dazzling grandeur of the ballroom. They emerged onto a marble balcony that overlooked the palace gardens, bathed in silver moonlight. The night air was crisp, carrying the scent of roses and jasmine, and the distant sounds of the ball were muffled, leaving only the soft whisper of the wind and their own quiet laughter. Cinderella's heart fluttered as the prince looked at her with a mixture of curiosity and warmth. "You seem different from anyone I've ever met," he said, his voice low and sincere. "There's a spark in your eyes, a fire I cannot ignore. Tell me, who are you really?" She hesitated, aware of the delicate secret she guarded, yet the kindness in his gaze made her want to reveal more than just the surface. I'm just someone who dreams," she admitted softly, her fingers brushing the railing. "Someone who longs to see the world beyond the walls I've always known." The prince smiled, stepping closer. "Then tonight, you've brought the world to me. I've seen your dreams, your courage, and I wish I could see more. I wish I could know the woman behind the gown and glass slippers." Cinderella felt a warmth spread through her chest, a mixture of hope and fear. The connection between them was undeniable, more real than anything she had imagined. Her pulse quickened as she realized this. Perhaps for the first time, she was seen not as a servant, not as someone unworthy, but as a person full of ideas, passions, and heart. She began, then faltered. "I've always imagined a life where I could be free, where I could make choices for myself, not just follow orders. And I never thought anyone would understand that." The prince reached out, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "I understand," he whispered, "more than you know. And I want to help make your dreams real, if you'll let me." For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. The stars above twinkled like tiny lanterns in the sky. The garden below shimmered with the reflection of moonlight, and Cinderella felt a surge of hope, an almost dizzying joy that her life could truly change. But then, faintly at first, the echo of a bell reached her ears. One chime. Midnight. Her stomach sank as the warning sank in. The magic, her gown, the carriage, the glass slippers, would vanish the moment the clock struck 12. She looked at the prince, eyes wide with panic. I must go," she said, voice trembling, stepping back. "I can't stay." The prince frowned, reaching for her hand. "Go? But why? You just arrived." I cannot explain," she gasped, pulling gently but firmly away. "Please trust me. I must leave before it's too late." The wind seemed to whisper urgency in her ears as she hurried toward the stairway leading back to the ballroom. Every step a mix of fear and longing. The prince called her name, but the chime grew louder in her mind, echoing through her heart. She knew she had only moments before the spell would be broken, and everything she had dreamed of would vanish. As she vanished into the shadows, leaving the prince behind, the first hint of despair crept in, but so did a flicker of determination. "I will not let this be the end," she thought. "I will find a way, somehow." The night air wrapped around her like a cloak as she fled into the labyrinthine palace corridors, the echoing music of the ballroom fading behind her, and the clock's relentless ticking marking the approach of midnight. The distant echo of the clock's chime grew louder in Cinderella's ears, each note pounding like a drum of warning. She raced through the palace corridors, the glittering tiles beneath her glass slippers clicking in a rapid rhythm. The walls, once grand and inviting, now seemed like a maze of shadowy towers and darkened arches. Behind her, the faint shuffle of footsteps grew louder. Guards, alerted by whispers and rumors, were in pursuit. She darted around a corner, nearly colliding with a suit of armor, and pressed on, her breath quick and shallow. At the grand staircase, her heart lurched. She leapt onto the polished steps, the delicate sound of glass against marble betraying her haste. One of her slippers slipped from her foot and tumbled down the staircase, landing with a soft clink on the polished floor below. She didn't dare stop. The slipper was lost, but she had no time to mourn it. "Trust the magic," a gentle, familiar voice whispered in her mind. The fairy godmother's guidance echoed through the night. "Trust it, and it will guide you." Cinderella didn't look back. She ran faster, her gown shimmering under the moonlight, streaming through the windows. The massive palace doors loomed ahead, and with a flicker of hope, she saw her carriage waiting like a faithful steed, its golden wheels gleaming in the silver light. The guards gained ground, their shouts echoing behind her, but the carriage seemed to shimmer with a magic all its own. Cinderella leapt into it, and with a swirl of sparkling lights and the whisper of a wand, the horses pawed the cobblestones, ready to gallop into the night. The first deep toll of midnight rang out, reverberating across the palace walls. In an instant, the magic that had cloaked her in beauty began to unravel. The edges of her gown shimmered, and her radiant mask of elegance faded like morning mist. The carriage doors slammed shut, and the horses surged forward, racing away from the palace, just as the clock finished its final strike. Cinderella clutched her seat, heart pounding, eyes wide with both fear and exhilaration. She looked back at the distant palace, now just a shadow against the starlit sky, and a bittersweet pang pierced her chest. The night of wonder, the connection with the prince, and the magic all seemed like a dream slipping through her fingers. But the fairy godmother's voice lingered softly in her ear, soothing and steadfast. "This is not the end, my dear. Trust, and the rest will follow." The carriage sped into the moonlit forest beyond the palace gates, leaving behind the world she had only just glimpsed, a world of possibilities, love, and courage she had never dared to imagine. And though one slipper lay lost on the marble floor of the palace, a promise lingered in the night air. That magic, true magic, was never gone. The carriage wheels whispered to a gentle halt just beyond the familiar forest edge. Cinderella slipped out, the night air cool against her flushed cheeks. Her gown, once radiant with magic, had reverted to its simple, worn fabric, yet the memories of the evening glimmered in her mind like starlight. She clutched the remaining glass slipper tightly, its delicate weight a bittersweet reminder of the magic that had transported her from ashes to the ballroom. Creeping through the shadows, she approached her home, careful to avoid the lantern-lit windows where her stepmother and stepsisters might be lingering. The door creaked softly as she slipped inside, her bare feet soundless against the wooden floor. The house was quiet, save for the faint ticking of a clock and the crackling of the dying hearth. She sank onto the worn rug by the fireplace, drawing her knees to her chest. Her breath trembled between exhilaration and anxiety. It really happened. I danced with the prince. He talked to me, truly talked to me. And I felt seen. But the shadow of reality pressed in. Her stepmother's harsh voice echoed in her memory. "You are unworthy. You cannot go beyond your station." The thought made her chest tighten. How could a simple girl from ashes hope to step into a world of palaces, elegance, and crowns? Cinderella lifted the glass slipper, tracing its delicate curve with a fingertip. She wondered if the prince would ever discover her, if the fleeting connection they shared could survive the distance between their worlds. Would he remember me? Would he even know how to find me? The stepsisters' laughter drifted faintly from their chambers, and Cinderella drew the blanket of her imagination tighter around herself. She pictured the ballroom again, the glittering chandeliers, the orchestra's music, and the prince's kind eyes, warm and full of curiosity. A hopeful smile tugged at her lips, despite the worry that lingered. I must believe he'll find me," she whispered to the empty room, her voice carrying a fragile determination. "Somehow he'll know. Somehow I'll see him again." For the first time, Cinderella allowed herself to dream not only of magic, but of love, possibility, and courage. She tucked the remaining slipper under her pillow, a talisman of hope. Though the night's wonder had ended, the spark it ignited within her would not be extinguished. Outside, the moon continued its slow journey across the sky, casting silver light over the quiet village. Inside, Cinderella drifted into a restless sleep, the memory of the prince's smile lingering like a promise, and the future, uncertain yet shimmering with potential, awaited her. The morning sun spilled golden light across the town, but inside Cinderella's modest home, shadows lingered. Word had spread quickly. The prince had declared that he would marry the girl whose foot fit the delicate glass slipper. The stepsisters pranced and preened, eager to claim the prize, their laughter loud and triumphant. Cinderella sat quietly by the window, her heart caught between excitement and fear. She held the second slipper, its fragile crystal sparkling faintly in the morning light. "It's mine. It belongs to me," she whispered under her breath, her fingers tightening around it. Yet the memory of her stepmother's scornful gaze reminded her of the danger in stepping forward too soon. Inside the palace, the prince's search had begun in earnest. He rode through town with calm determination, the sunlight glinting on his armor, but his expression softened with kindness. He paused to speak to merchants, children, and villagers, asking after the mysterious girl who had danced with him. With every conversation, he treated each person with patience and respect, listening attentively, smiling warmly, and giving small acts of encouragement. Cinderella watched him from a distance as he helped a struggling baker lift a heavy sack of flour, then knelt to comfort a frightened child whose puppy had run into the street. The prince's actions spoke louder than words. He was searching not just for a girl, but for someone who shared his heart, someone gentle, courageous, and true. Her pulse quickened. Could it be me? Would he recognize me if I came forward? The thought was both thrilling and terrifying. She longed to run into his arms, to reveal herself, but caution held her back. Her stepmother's voice echoed in her mind. "You are nothing. You must stay hidden." Meanwhile, the stepsisters arrived at the palace, laughing and shoving one another as they tried to force their feet into the slipper. The delicate glass refused them, snapping back with gentle but firm rejection, as if mocking their vanity and pride. Each attempt left the stepsisters more frustrated, their confidence eroding with every failure. The prince, observing from the doorway, smiled kindly, but maintained a patient resolve. He turned his gaze towards the town, where a figure lingered behind the shadows. Cinderella, barely daring to breathe. Their eyes met for a fleeting moment, and his heart stirred with recognition, though he could not yet place her. Cinderella's hands shook slightly as she hid the remaining slipper beneath her cloak. Soon I will have to trust the magic. Trust him. The prince's presence filled her with both hope and fear. She knew that the moment of truth was approaching, and with it, the possibility of her life changing forever. Outside, the streets buzzed with anticipation. Villagers whispered excitedly about the mysterious girl, while the stepsisters sulked, desperate to claim a prize that clearly wasn't theirs. In the midst of it all, Cinderella felt a strange calm settle over her. She could not yet step forward, but she would wait for the right moment, one that would not only reveal her identity, but honor her courage and dreams. The prince continued his search, unaware that the girl he sought was closer than anyone could imagine, hiding in plain sight, her heart beating with equal parts fear and hope. The prince rode through the village, his golden cloak fluttering behind him, stopping finally in front of the modest home where whispers of mystery and hope lingered. Word had reached him. The girl he had danced with might be here. He dismounted, calm but determined, and approached the door with quiet confidence. Inside, chaos brewed. Cinderella's stepmother, Lady Callista, sensed the prince's presence immediately. Her eyes narrowed, her hands trembling with fury. "No, she will not meet him," she hissed. She slammed the door shut and threw the heavy bolt into place. The stepsisters giggled nervously, peeking from behind her skirts, unsure if they were part of the victory or soon to be embarrassed. But Cinderella had learned long ago that courage often required quick thinking. Calmly, she traced her hand along the wall, finding the hidden latch behind the tapestry, the secret exit she had discovered months before while doing chores. With a quiet click, a narrow door creaked open. Heart pounding, she slipped through the shadows, careful to stay unseen by her stepmother. Outside, the prince stood patiently, scanning the street. When Cinderella emerged, her heart leaped. She was no longer the timid girl from the hearth. She carried herself with quiet confidence, the moonlight catching the edge of her dress, and in her hand she held the delicate glass slipper. "Your Highness," she whispered, her voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotion. The prince's eyes widened in recognition. "It's you," he said, as if confirming a dream. "I knew you would be the one." He knelt, offering the slipper with reverence, and Cinderella's hand trembled as she extended her foot. The slipper slid on effortlessly, the perfect fit. A hush fell over the onlookers, villagers, neighbors, and even her stepsisters, who could hardly believe what they were witnessing. Lady Callista's face twisted in disbelief and rage. "Impossible! This cannot be," she stammered. The stepsisters gaped, their vanity and arrogance crumbling as Cinderella stood tall, poised, and radiant in her modest dignity. The prince rose and extended his hand. "This is the girl I danced with at the ball. She has a heart full of courage, kindness, and wisdom. She is the one I have been seeking." Cinderella took his hand, a shy but triumphant smile spreading across her face. "And I never stopped hoping you would find me," she replied, her eyes meeting his with the trust and warmth of someone who had risked everything for a dream. The crowd erupted in quiet awe and whispers of joy. Lady Callista and the stepsisters, for all their schemes, were powerless against the grace and courage that Cinderella now embodied. She had not only outwitted their cruelty, but had done so with dignity, proving that true strength comes from character, not vanity. The prince and Cinderella shared a moment of quiet triumph, hands entwined, hearts racing. In that instant, the world seemed to hold its breath, recognizing that love, bravery, and hope had triumphed over cruelty and fear. The path was clear. The castle, the ball, and a future filled with promise awaited. And for the first time, Cinderella truly felt that she belonged, not just in the prince's heart, but in the world she had always dreamed of. The castle courtyard shimmered in the morning sun, adorned with banners, flowers, and the joyous sounds of music. Word of the prince's discovery had spread quickly, and villagers gathered, cheering for the girl who had captured not only the prince's heart, but the hearts of all who valued courage and kindness. Inside the palace, the prince took Cinderella's hand, holding it gently. "Your bravery, your wit, and your kindness, these are the things that make you my equal, my partner, my heart," he said, his eyes shining with sincerity. "I do not love you for status, nor for appearances. I love you for who you are." Cinderella's cheeks flushed, but her smile radiated confidence and joy. "And I never imagined that courage could lead me to this moment," she replied, her voice steady yet full of emotion. "I only followed my heart, and it led me to you." Lady Callista and the stepsisters stood quietly, humbled and silenced. They had schemed, plotted, and tried to manipulate their way into favor, yet the truth of character had prevailed. Cinderella approached them, her expression serene. "I forgive you," she said gently. There is room for kindness, even after cruelty. Learn from this, and perhaps one day you will see the value of compassion. The stepmother's face softened slightly, and the stepsisters bowed their heads, shame mixed with newfound respect. Though it would take time, the lesson of humility had finally touched their hearts. The prince led Cinderella through the cheering crowd, their hands entwined as the townspeople celebrated. The palace bells rang, echoing across the kingdom, announcing that love, courage, and truth had triumphed. Children waved, merchants clapped, and villagers cheered, feeling the warmth of hope and happiness that Cinderella had brought not just to the prince, but to them all. As the day gave way to evening, the prince and Cinderella stood on the balcony, looking out over the kingdom. The setting sun cast a golden glow on the castle walls, illuminating the future that awaited them. Together, the prince whispered, "We will face whatever comes, as equals and as partners." Cinderella rested her head against his shoulder, the trials and fears of the past fading into memory. Together, she agreed, her heart full of hope and joy. The kingdom rejoiced in the union of two hearts who had found each other through courage, destiny, and unwavering kindness. And as stars began to twinkle in the twilight sky, the promise of a life filled with love, adventure, and shared dreams glimmered brightly. Proof that true magic resides not in spells, but in the heart. The palace glimmered with golden light as guests from across the kingdom gathered for the royal wedding. The air was filled with music, laughter, and the sweet scent of blooming flowers. Cinderella walked down the grand aisle, her gown sparkling like starlight, her heart steady and joyous. The prince awaited her, eyes full of love and admiration, ready to begin their life together. As they exchanged vows, the entire kingdom seemed to hold its breath, witnessing a love built not on status or privilege, but on courage, kindness, and unwavering honesty. The crowd erupted in cheers as they sealed their promises with a gentle kiss, and the palace bells rang out in celebration, echoing far and wide. In the months that followed, Cinderella proved that her heart and mind were as invaluable as her charm. She implemented thoughtful reforms, helped those in need, and encouraged the arts, education, and charity programs throughout the kingdom. The prince stood proudly by her side, supporting her ideas, learning from her wisdom, and sharing in every success. Together, they ruled with fairness, compassion, and creativity, earning the love and respect of all their people. Yet, despite her new royal life, Cinderella never forgot her roots. Each evening, when the sun dipped below the horizon and the castle lights twinkled like stars, she would slip away to a quiet balcony. In her hand, she held the remaining glass slipper, a delicate reminder of the magical night that had changed everything. She traced its crystal curves with her finger and smiled, remembering the thrill of her midnight escape, the fear and the wonder that had led her to this moment. It all began with courage, she whispered softly, her eyes reflecting the moonlight. And with a little magic, anything is possible. The prince joined her, wrapping an arm around her waist, and together they looked out over the kingdom, a land now filled with hope, joy, and endless possibilities. The wind carried laughter and the faint echo of a magical night, long past, yet unforgettable. Cinderella's journey from ashes to royalty had taught her that true magic exists not in spells or wands, but in bravery, ingenuity, and a heart willing to love and forgive. and with the prince by her side, she knew that every day held the promise of wonder, adventure, and happiness. The kingdom thrived, love flourished, and Cinderella, once a girl trapped in shadows, now stood in the light, her life forever changed by a single enchanted night.
The Stories book is a captivating collection of tales that traverse diverse genres and emotions, spanning the realms of fantasy, science fiction, romance, and mystery. Each narrative is a journey into the unexpected, weaving intricate plots and compelling characters. With a skillful blend of vivid imagery and thought-provoking themes, this anthology invites readers to explore the depths of imagination and discover the universal threads that connect us all. From heartwarming moments to spine, we hope you enjoyed these captivating video stories. Be sure to subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming content like this. Thanks for watching, and keep spreading the video story.